Live from Town Square Towers at the heart of the Jersey Shore. Wake up with Jeremy Grunin. Get up, get out, do something. Join the conversation. 732-505-1160. News Talk Radio WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. Listen online at WOBMAM.com.
Good morning and welcome back to Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. I am Phil Brilliant from Brilliant Environmental Services. Pinch hitting for Jeremy today as he has a day off, a well-deserved day off. But he'll be back tomorrow morning bright and early at 5:30, so remember to set your alarm clock. But right now it is 7:07, so remember to get up, get out, and do something. And if you'd like to join the conversation, it is 732-505-1160. And I'm excited about our next guest. We have Scott Donie, who all of you know as the 1992 silver medalist in the Summer Olympics in Barcelona from the 10-meter platform. But I know him from our childhood in Somerset, New Jersey. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning, Phil. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you. I was thinking when I got told by Jeremy that I was going to cover this morning. Actually, that sounded bad. When Jeremy asked me to cover this morning, he doesn't tell me what to do. I said, who can be some guests? And I said, we're going to be about 11 days from the Olympics. Do I know anybody tied to the Olympics? And the first name I thought about was Mr. Scott Donie. So I am glad that you could be with us this morning.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I've definitely got Olympic fever. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, you know what? It's one of those things too. I think people really come together for the Olympics. I think it is one of the most patriotic things we have because it's not about choosing your favorite team. It's necessarily supporting your country.
Well, yeah, not only that, but it's also proof that the world can live together and get along. The Olympic Village, every country comes together and lives side by side peacefully and happily, and it's really like an example of how the world can be. So it brings the whole world together for a short period of time, and it's a one-of-a-kind event.
So let's go back. We're going to go back in time. You and I have talked a little bit about it. So, when was that aha moment? When was that moment in life where you're like, I'm training for the Olympics. I'm going to do this.
Yeah, actually, it all came together for me. The year was 1976. And that year, three things happened to me, and it changed the course of my life. The first one was we got a trampoline in our backyard.
I remember the trampoline in your backyard.
Yeah, and it was one of those things. We'd been to a friend's house, and they had one. And my brother and I, who was about a year and a half older, had a great time jumping on it, and we started to bug our parents every day, saying, "Please, please, 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 please." And that year, '76, for Christmas, they broke down and got us a trampoline. So my mom was a phys ed teacher, and one of her friends knew a lot about trampolines, so he offered to give us lessons, and she just wanted us to be safe. That was the extent of the lessons that she was hoping for. And the next thing you know, we're jumping up and down on that trampoline every day. The other thing that happened was I had been sneaking out of practice, and I was on the swim team at the local summer club, Cedar Hill.
Yep.
And I kept sneaking out of practice to go jump off the diving boards. And the swim coach looked at me one day. I was an 8-year-old kid, and he was like, I'm not blind. I see what you're doing there. Why don't you just ask the diving coach if you can join the diving team? And I was like, what? What's that? I didn't even know it was a thing. And so that happened. Then that same summer, I saw the Olympics on TV. It was '76, and Bruce Jenner.
That's right.
It's a very clear memory that I have of him winning the decathlon, waving that miniature American flag around as he ran around the stadium. And to me, in that moment, the entire nation was unified by what he did. And in a way, the entire world was unified in that moment by what he had done. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but I want to be a part of that. And if you can ask, you may remember, but from that age on, I started telling everybody, I'm going to be in the Olympics. I found out diving was in the Olympics, and I just started doing that, and I was like, I'm going to be in the Olympics for diving. And I started telling everybody that would listen.
I do remember your mom was my phys ed teacher. And I remember, basically you were going to be in the Olympics, and you were going to work your derriere off diving. And
Right.
so your diving days, you're 8 years old. When do you start seeing what you're going to be doing in the Olympics, what your specialty is? And, we talked a little bit about the fact of, 10 meters is 33 feet in the air. What gets you up that high?
Well, I had no idea what I was doing in the beginning, and I had no idea how difficult my stated goal was, especially for a kid. I wasn't really a natural talent at the sport in the beginning, and I have been afraid of heights, and I still am to this day.
Yeah.
So
I join you there, by the way.
Yeah, so I started out, just learning the basics at a local club. I started at my summer club, Cedar Hill Swim Club in Somerset, and then started to go during the school year to a place in Bridgewater, New Jersey. And about the age of 11, I qualified for my first junior national meet, and I got dead last. So that was my introduction to like the national level of diving. I was really nervous. I just didn't know how to compete, didn't know how to relax, and I literally, out of the 35 kids or whatever that got to the nationals, I was last. But there was something that my coach saw in me, because that, after that meet, he came to me and he was like, "Look, I think you've got something about you, and you need a better coach and a better program." And I really appreciated that honesty, because he was just a young guy who was kind of doing it on the side for fun. And there was one of the top programs in the country at that time was run out of Columbia University. And the coach of that program was a guy named Jim Stilson. He was the varsity coach at Columbia, but he had this club program that was called the Morningside Muggers. Now, back in those days, Columbia is located in the Morningside Heights section of Manhattan, and back in those days, it was not the place you wanted to be walking around at night.
Yeah, definitely an interesting name for that neighborhood.
Right. So he named the team the Morningside Muggers, and I became a part of that team. That team had eventually another Olympian on it, Patrick Jeffrey, who's now the head coach at Stanford, and it had a few other divers that went on to be national champions. And my mom and the other New Jersey diving moms worked out a carpool system and got us into the city, 3 or 4 times a week. And so that's when I started to realize, okay, this is something I really want to pursue hard. And so by the time I was 12, I was top 8 at that junior national meet. By the time I was 13, I was top 3, and by the time I was 14, I was the national champion for my age group. Wow.
So I guess we could say you made leaps and bounds in a very short time, going from last place to first place in 3 years.
Well, that program at Columbia University absolutely changed the direction of my life, and that coach, Jim Stilson, completely changed the direction of my life. And I would go on to actually dive with him in college, not at Columbia, but at SMU, because he actually got the job at SMU around the time when I was around 8th or 9th grade or so.
Okay. Well, we're going to have to go to break. Scott, when we come back, I want to talk about getting into the Olympics. I want to talk about the Olympic experience and, lead a little bit into, the coming home after the Olympics. Remember, if you'd like to join the conversation, 732-505-1160. Be back in a moment.
Wake up with Jeremy Grunin wherever you go. Download the Radio Pup app for your smartphone or tablet. News Talk Radio WOBM AM 1160 and 1310.
Good morning. Welcome back to Wake Up with Jeremy Grennan. I am Phil Brilliant, substituting for Jeremy this morning. It is 7:21. Get up, get out, and do something. Remember to join the conversation, 732-505-1160. And we are joined this morning by Scott Donie, and we are talking Summer Olympics. And coming back here from the break, we want to talk about that moment. Scott, did I say Scott or Steve? Did I say Scott?
You said Scott.
Okay, just making sure. I almost said Steve there for a second, but that's your older brother, who is my age. I guess he's still living in Texas, right?
Yeah, he's in Austin.
In Austin. So Summer Olympics, you're in Barcelona. I'm assuming your entire family is there cheering you on, and you're going up for that last dive to become the silver medalist. If I remember correctly, and you were actually leading at some part, right?
I don't think I ever had to lead.
Okay.
There was a young Chinese kid named Sun Shu Wei who was getting 10s on pretty much everything.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I was right behind him, and I had a chance to win gold if he missed. But he would have had to miss a dive, and he never did.
Okay.
But I definitely had the best competitive day of my life and my career, and and couldn't have been happier with how it all went.
Yeah, I mean, going into the Olympics, I mean, what was the expectation? Were you going to medal?
Well, nobody expected me to medal, and I was kind of off the radar a little bit. I had never been a medalist in any major international competition before that. I was coming off an injury. I was the main guy who believed it, but yeah, that all came together on that day. And one dive in particular, reverse 3.5, that I had never, done really well.
What's a verse 3.5 for us amateurs?
So you're standing on the platform and you're facing the water, and then you're going to somersault back towards the tower 3.5 times. And back in those days, that was the hardest dive being done, and I just couldn't make the rotations. But on that day in Barcelona in the finals, I did the best one I ever did and got 9s on it, and that one vaulted me right into the medal conversation. And then it just kept going from there. I just kept hitting all my dives, and one of those magical days.
Wow! And again, that's fantastic. Now, again, you said you dive out, but you actually come back towards the board. Is that similar? I remember in the Olympics prior, Greg Louganis hit his head on the board doing a.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a pretty famous moment in Olympic diving history. The best diver of all time hit his head during the Olympic prelims on a reverse 2.5 pike. And most people have seen that replay
over and over again. Yep.
They played it over and over and over again. And of course, I was training on the same team as Louganis at that time, and we were training partners. And I was doing that same dive every day, 5 or 6 times a day. And so every time it came on to show the replay, I had to look away because I had to go to the pool that day and try and do that same dive. So seeing that image was not helpful.
Yeah, definitely not. And I mean, so when you're practicing diving and you're training for the Olympics, I mean, is it really repetition? Are you doing the same thing over and over again and just trying to tighten up the entry into the water and tighten up the twists and turns?
It's like anything, as you get to a higher level, the things that you're working on are more fine-tuning and more detail-oriented. When you're young, you might be learning a new dive once every couple of weeks, and once you get to a certain point, you're just working on form, you're working on your ability to compete, you're working on strength, flexibility, everything. But yeah, the amount of improvement gets smaller and smaller and smaller the better you get, which I think is pretty much the rule.
Wow, that is amazing. So again, as I told you, Scott, when we have this radio thing, we have a lot of breaks. We're going to be coming up on the news break right now. We had a commercial. But when we come back from the news break, I want to talk about that step up to the medal stand, the silver medal around your neck. And that has got to be a moment that I know you may wake up every morning thinking about that moment. because it's got to be that special moment in life. But I want to touch upon that when we get back after the news. Remember to join the conversation, 732-505-1160, and we'll be back in a moment.
The news is next, live from the WOBM Newsroom, the Town Square, New Jersey News Network, and Fox News Radio. Wake up with Jeremy Grunin, News Talk Radio WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. Live from the Jersey Shore to the world. Get up, get out, do something. Wake up with Jeremy Grunin. Take the show wherever you go. Download the free Radio Pup app for your smartphone or tablet. Join the conversation, 732-505-1160. News Talk Radio WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. Listen online at WOBMAM.com.
Good morning. Welcome back to Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. I'm Phil Brilliant. It is 7:35 on Monday, July 25th, and we're going to jump right back into continuing our conversation with Scott Donie. We are talking Summer Olympics. We are not going to be playing Steely Dan for James Doherty, but we are going to talk about that moment when Scott stepped up to the medal stand with the silver medal about to be put around his neck. What does that feel like?
Well, I'll tell you, before we get into that, I just want to do a quick plug because with the Olympics coming up, people are always asking me, how do I get my kid involved in diving? I'm actually going to be doing a diving camp in 3 weeks from today, August 15th through 19th in Maplewood, New Jersey. Now, this is the same pool where I first jumped off of a 10-meter platform when I was about 11 years old. And this is a camp that's open to kids 8 to 18, any ability level. Just go to Facebook and look up Scott Donie Maplewood Diving Camp, and you can sign your kid up. And, again, any level, you don't have to have any diving experience.
Oh, that's awesome.
Check it out.
We'll have to come back, and we'll say that again as we finish our interview, too. But take us to the diving. Take us to that moment where you're about to get your medal.
So when you, when you're about to get called up to, to be on a medal podium, it's really a surreal moment. It's hard to describe, but it's kind of like one of those moments where everything is in slow motion. Something you may have been picturing, at least for me, I'd been picturing it at that point for 15 years since I was 8, and I was 23 when it happened. And then when they call your name out, it feels kind of like you're floating a little bit above the earth. And when you stand up there and you're, in Barcelona, there was a crowd of about 16,000 people, in the stadium there, and just cheering as loudly as they can. And I remember I had a hat on and I took it off, because for some reason I had always envisioned having a hat on so that I could take it off and wave it to the crowd.
Right. So
yeah, I had a hat on. I took it off. I waved it to the crowd, and and soaked it all up. And definitely, if I'm ever feeling down or having a rough day, I just try to go back to that moment and remember.
And you watch the American flag go up in front of you.
Yeah, and the American flag goes up, and it's pretty special.
So then you come home, the Olympics are over, and I from reading and from articles and actually from just having some friends around town, it's not exactly the response when you walk home that you had expected.
Yeah, it's pretty common that after the big build up to something like that you have a downtime, and it hit me especially hard. I guess you'd call it post-traumatic stress syndrome, and I went into a full-on depression and completely just lost my focus, lost my passion for diving. I ended up, getting really out of shape and doing things I shouldn't have been doing, living a very unhealthy lifestyle, and it was a little bit on one of those self-destructive courses. And it all kind of caught up with me about a year after the Olympics. I was in a national meet live on TV. It was the U.S. Olympic Festival, and I was leading the competition. and in a handstand dive when all of a sudden, and this was my easiest dive of my whole list, while I was in my handstand, I started questioning what I was doing and why I was doing it, and I wasn't having any fun. And I had always said to myself, as soon as it's not fun, I'm going to walk away, because that's why I always did it. And so I'm literally upside down, 33 and a half feet above the water, and in my head I'm saying, well, what am I doing? This isn't any fun. And this used to be my favorite thing to do, competing in front of a huge crowd, national television. I was in first place. I knew I could do this dive for nines really easily. And I was like, well, you know what? This isn't fun. You should stop. And I was like, no, just do the dive. No, how about do a cannonball? That would be fun. And then, you just get that voice in your head cycling. And eventually, after about 40 seconds, my arms gave out and my body made the decision for me, and I came back down on the platform. And from there, it became a national story. Olympic diver on the brink.
Right.
Yeah. And there was a story in Dateline, and all the, national news picked it up. And so I had to, completely walk away from the sport, reassess, and get myself back together.
Yeah. But 3 years later, the story is now, don't look now, Scott Donie, driven off the platform by nerves and depression, won the U.S. trials in the springboard. So you make your way back.
I definitely made my way back, yeah. And it's pretty rare in our sport for someone to switch from a platform specialty to a springboard specialty. But I was able to do it, and, defeated the defending gold medalist Mark Lindsay at the trials, and made it back to another Olympics. But it was a long road to get there, and but everything was well worth it. And then again had the best day of my life in the Olympic final there in Atlanta. Finished fourth, went out on a high note, and so very, very, very grateful for that.
Amazing. And I know a lot of it is because, at 8 years old, you were determined. At 23 years old, 26-year-old determined. But with family around you, they get you through. When we come back from this break, we're going to wrap up and talk about things that you're doing now, how life has come full circle for you, and we'll be back in a moment.
All right.
Rush Limbaugh today at noon. More Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin coming up next. News Talk Radio, WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. Now, back to Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. News Talk Radio, WOBM AM 1160 and 1310 and WOBMAM.com.
Good morning. Welcome back to Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. I am Phil Brilliant, substituting for Jeremy this morning, and we are continuing our conversation with Scott Donie as we just completed the 1996 Olympics, where he finished in fourth place in the 3-meter springboard in Atlanta. And then, Scott, is that retirement?
Yeah, that was it. That was it for me after 96. Yeah.
So we always talk about on this show about getting up, getting out, and doing something. And it appears that you have done that. You are giving back to your students, we'll say, to your team. And as you have spent the past 17 years head coaching at NYU, and I have here, and you've explained it better to me, you're the 17-time University Athletic Association Coach of the Year, and you explained to me that you could win that twice in 1 year for the men's team and the women's team. But so you're coaching now. How does that compare to the days you were on the board?
Well, it's a totally different skill, and one that I've hopefully acquired over all these years that I've been coaching. And but it's a completely different skill, and I really feel like I have so much to share with these kids, so I really try to share every single thing that I know. And, the key to coaching, I think, is really creating the right culture. And, I've gotten to the point now where I'm reading books on coaching and reading about, Mike Krzyzewski and Dean Smith and Jim Valvano, and trying to figure out what the great coaches, do. And they all talk about culture. And now I've just gotten a new job, and I've been hired as the head men's and women's coach for Columbia University. And so that's my main goal in this brand new job I started a week ago, is to create a culture where, you know, everybody is comfortable taking risks and pushing each other and supporting each other and helping each other. So that's the goal, and the goal really ultimately is not just to teach them to be great divers, but also to teach them skills that they'll be able to use in the rest of their life.
Right. Again, because I mean, I'm sure as you're teaching as a coach, you're teaching life lessons. It's not just about, you know, we're gonna get perfect 10s and everything, but it's about learning to achieve the highest standards in life. And so, as a coach, as a teacher, as a mentor, you are doing great stuff. And congratulations on the new job. And as we start getting nearer to the wrap up of this interview, I did notice this weekend you had the opportunity down in Atlanta to meet the 2016 diving team. I saw some photo ops, some autographs. So how do they look?
Well, we got an incredible group. Their nickname is called the Perfect 10, and there's 5 women and 5 men, and every single one of them has an opportunity to win a medal in Rio. And a lot of these kids I've been mentoring since they were young junior divers at USA Diving Camp, so I've had the pleasure of watching them all grow up and develop, and we've got 3 returning medalists. David Badaya, who's the returning Olympic champion on the 10-meter. We've got Abby Johnston, who is a silver medalist in synchro. She's coming back on individual springboard. And we've got Christian Ibsen, who also was a bronze medalist in synchro, and he's coming back on individual springboard. And then we have 7 brand new first-time Olympians, and they're all just outstanding athletes and humans. They're just the nicest kids. I was joking while I was down there that, you know, this team really needs a bad boy or a bad girl, but there just aren't any candidates for that. They're all just, you know, the nicest kids you've ever seen.
How's it feel to be the old man on campus now?
That feels great. You know, we had a reunion of the '96 team because their training camp was actually in the Georgia Tech pool where the '96 Olympics were. So U.S. Diving thought it'd be cool to have a reunion of the '96 team along with their final training camp before they head off to Rio. So I was down there and I got to be a part of it. And, you know, while they were training, they had up to 2,000 people just watching the training sessions, and they let me kind of commentate their practice, and you know, obviously it was a fantastic experience.
Awesome. Well, it's great to be part of a team. I want to make sure we get one more plug in. So you have August 15th to the 19th, the Scott Donie Diving Camp in Maplewood, New Jersey, right? Yep.
Maplewood Diving Camp, and you can find the sign up on the Facebook page. Just look it up, Scott Donie Maplewood Diving Camp. And the registration is still open. The spots are filling up quick. But if you want to get your kid involved in a fantastic sport and give them a great camp experience for a week towards the end of the summer, check it out.
Sounds great. Scott, thank you very much for joining us this morning. I appreciate you calling in, and best of luck in your new job at Columbia University. I'm sure you'll be sending some kids to the Olympics sometime in the very near future, and we do appreciate it. And go USA. We'll be back in a moment.